everybody, my name's Jill Cassidy and I work for the Integrated Education Fund. We're delighted to be able to host this panel discussion today as part of Good Relations Week 2020, albeit in a slightly different format to what we're used to. The theme this year for Good Relations Week is celebrating our journey, embracing our future, and we feel like integrated education is particularly relevant to this. Integrated education is celebrating its 40th year and more schools than ever are hoping to become integrated, with parents wanting to find out more information and schools embarking on this journey to embrace all of their community.
I was very interested in integrated education because I wanted my children to grow up living and accepting and knowing other religions. Integration works.
So it's important for my children to grow up in a diverse, inclusive environment. Integration works.
Our children are very precious, so we want to give them the right start in life. Living in a very mixed area in Northern Ireland, I feel integrated education is the way forward, not just for our school, but for every school in Northern Ireland. Integration works.
Our panel discussion today is called Integrated Education, Embracing Our Future, and we're going to hear from some of the panellists who are discussing their experiences with integrated education. Our chair is Peter Osborne and he's going to host the conversation and his years of experience working in the reconciliation field.
Well, thanks for joining this panel discussion by three very important people for the integrated education movement. With us in this panel discussion, we've got Lucinda Wilson, who's a parent of a child at Carrickfergus Central Primary School. We've got Barry Corr, who's the principal of Seaview Primary School, and we've got Greer, who's part of the AlumNI Association, who has been a student at an integrated school in Northern Ireland and is now living outside Northern Ireland, putting his skills to good use. Folks, thanks very much indeed for joining this panel discussion. This is a very important time for integrated education for all sorts of reasons. It's a time when we may well have an independent review of education coming through the system at Stormont, thanks to the New Decade document. It's a time when there's real focus on education with the COVID-19 pandemic that we're all coping with. And I suppose part and parcel of that, it's a time when there'll be some questions asked about budgets and the economy and whether we can afford to have an education system that is as segregated as it is in Northern Ireland. There are many people that say education doesn't need more money. What it needs is to spend that money more wisely. And that's why I think this discussion is going to be really interesting. So folks, thanks for joining us. Lucinda, you're a parent, you're a mother. You got involved in the integrated movement a couple of years ago. Why did you do that? And tell us about your journey.
My journey with integrated education started only after my own education finished. And it's when I went out to the workplace and I discovered the difference. And basically I was brought up in a bubble and didn't know any difference. And it's when you go into the workplace and you see others find it difficult with the difference that there is in society, challenges, you know, friendships are divided. And then obviously as time went on, I've seen my friends' children come through an integrated primary school, and I loved the experience and I loved the ethos of the school. And it's the sort of education that I want my own children to have. Where I have one child at the primary school currently, I have another two to follow. So I'm quite excited by the whole movement, knowing that there has been 8 schools that have voted to hopefully move and transform to integrated status. Then it was back in February 2019 that Carrickfergus Central Primary School voted to transform to integrated, and 86% of the parents who voted yes, which is amazing. Since the vote, our school has enrolled by more than 1/3. So it has, so it shows there is the want out there in the community for integrated education.
Did you have any concerns or fears before you got involved in integrated education?
Personally, I had no fears or concerns. I was excited, but obviously meeting with other parents, the school held coffee mornings, information sessions. It was the fears and concerns of other parents that surprised me more. And an awful lot of the fear was around how the curriculum within the school would change. At the information sessions, these questions were answered. And almost automatically, you've seen relief wash over other parents.
Okay, that's really interesting, isn't it? That 86%, did you say, voted,
Yes.
of the parents voted to go integrated, and then you've had a third of an increase in
That's
enrollment in the school. So the demand is certainly there.
It is indeed. It was even this year, we've actually had to add an extra class onto the school. So we have, because of the intake of pupils that we've been able to accommodate.
So maybe that's a good time to bring in Barry Corr. Barry, you're principal of Seaview Primary School in Glenarm, and I think you've recently had a vote by the parents to go integrated. Do you recognise some of the concerns that Lucinda talked about, or the relief that some people felt when they heard about changes or no changes to the curriculum?
Yes, I recognise that, of course. We had other concerns. We were a small school and we were facing closure. And we had looked at integration for a long time. And that we decided to see what the public wanted, the parents wanted, and they definitely wanted an integrated school in the village of Glenarm. We tried to work with some other schools in the area, and that didn't have any positive results. So we went out on our own, and the Board of Governors backed it, and we had a parental vote as well, and 95% of the parents voted in favour of integration for us. And that was actually in June 2019, so it was roughly a year ago. And the following September, our pupils increased by 60%. And then this year they've gone up again. So 2 years ago, we were sitting at 42 pupils. This year we're sitting at 80 pupils. So that's all because of our vision to become integrated. So that's an increase in 90% of our pupils, which is absolutely amazing.
Those are incredible statistics. So 93% voted in favour, and you've nearly doubled the number of pupils that you have in the last year or so because of it.
Yeah, so 95% voted in favour and over 90% increase since that vote.
Wow, absolutely incredible. Was the process of the vote as difficult as you thought it might be at the start, or was it what you expected?
There was a lot. The vote is run by a company in London, and it's a postal vote. So there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of information that has to go to parents, and that has to be okayed by NICE and by the EA to make sure that we're following all legalities, because we were going for a controlled integrated primary school and that would involve the EA. So there's a bit of to and fro and getting it back and forward, and then getting the parents to vote, and then advertising it. And we had a pop-in day where we had invited the parents to come in at 3 different times throughout the day to view the school, and the staff answered questions that parents had about what this meant for the village and what this meant for the area. So there was a lot of work that went on behind the scenes, behind the whole getting the vote out. It encompassed a lot more aspects to it. But yes, the voting part, it was tricky because you had to do it properly and get everyone registered and then wait tentatively for the results.
But worthwhile doing, was it, with a 95% positive vote? Yes.
So I actually, the result was coming in on a Friday, the 28th of June, the last day of term, at 5 o'clock. It's like the old Cracker Jack show, and giving away a major. And so I was getting a phone call at 2 minutes after 5, and the UTV cameras were outside waiting on the result. And I released it to the parents and to the TV crew at the same time. So I was just hopeful, I was optimistic, and it was just a fantastic result.
Well, congratulations on it, and terrific amount of work that you did, and thank you
for
all of that effort as well.
And everyone else. It was certainly a community effort. It was the staff and the community made this happen.
We'll come back to some of those issues again with Lucinda and yourself, Barry, but can I ask you, Shane, turn to you, Shane, now. I suppose in a way you're the product of the work of people like Lucinda and Barry, having been through the integrated system as a student. Did you feel as you went through school that you were different to what you knew in other schools?
Yeah, I very clearly, in the sense that when you're used to, as I did, I grew up in a, kind of a unionist, loyalist environment. And, the first time I knowingly kind of met conversationally, played with, engaged with a Catholic was when I was 11, and I started at Lagan College, and that guy happened to turn into still be my best friend to this day. So that side of it is very striking, because you're used to a very like a hermetically sealed environment in which there's one culture, and then you're in an environment where you have a plurality of cultures. So it's striking. But what I would say is, although it's striking because of how normal it is, when you go to an integrated school, it's not the case that, integration is kind of this central thing that's thrown at you the whole time. It's just the process of being there around other people who are very similar and just happen to be from different traditions. And that experience of kind of normality and how normal it is to engage with people who up until that point you've either had nothing to do with or very little to do with, that's really what's so striking, that actually you have this sense of otherness before you go to an integrated school. And then when you go to an integrated school, you actually get a sense of community. And that's something that I think stays with you. So it is striking, but it's striking because of how normal it turns out to be.
And that's a really interesting perspective, that when you go to the integrated school, you see what around the world most people regard as normal compared to what you thought was normal before you went to the school. And I suspect, you're now living in the States, I think, aren't you? Do people there understand? People there understand the segregation that exists in education in Northern Ireland? How do they react to that?
It's interesting because there are parallels with segregation here, although the structures around it, the regulations around it, the history around it are, of course, very, very different and produces quite different outcomes. But there is at least a shared understanding of what it means to be divided educationally, and the kind of profound negative implications that can have for for society. The one thing that, when you do chat to people here, and, I'm very active in kind of the Northern Ireland, Irish diaspora kind of stuff in Washington, D.C., and then there's an abundance of it. The one thing that's very striking to Americans when you talk about it is actually how few children in Northern Ireland go to formally integrated schools. At the latest count, over 2 decades on from the Good Friday Agreement, only 7% of kids go to integrated schools. And then, as we saw in the Life and Time survey last year, the big annual survey in Northern Ireland, which just blew my mind, the age group that was most likely to want their own children to go to a school of the same religion as the parent were 18 to 24 year olds. So, people are really struck by those kind of numbers, and it's just counterintuitive to them, because they're in an environment where you would never consider separating educationally Catholics, Protestants, or really any group educationally, religiously.
Can I come to you, Lucinda, on a point that Shane made there, which was that going to an integrated school became a new normal for him, and in a sense what should be normal for anybody going to school in Northern Ireland. Do you get a sense in Carrickfergus, through the work of Carrickfergus Central Primary School, that it is contributing to normalising things more, either in an area of Carrickfergus or Carrickfergus more generally?
Very much so. Carrickfergus has developed quite a lot in the last 10 to 15 years. Also within that time, there's an integrated high school within Carrickfergus, which originally started in Portagabans in Whitehead. People travel from Belfast, they travel from Larne. People are travelling to go to these schools. As Shane pointed out, 7% of pupils, but those 7% are willing to travel to different towns, different districts to be able to attend integrated schools. Whereas a number of years ago, like 20 years ago was the Good Friday Agreement, you didn't leave the area you grew up in, usually. Northern Ireland is not that big. people are now prepared to travel, they're prepared to mix, socialise, whereas before that wouldn't have happened. So it is contributing a lot. The more far out towns are developing and growing. No, they're growing, their businesses are growing as well. You know, the towns are growing, there's people, they're looking for other places to live that aren't city based. And they're prepared to travel.
So in a way, the Carrickfergus Central Primary is helping to change Carrickfergus, but what I'm hearing you say is Carrickfergus itself is changing, and people are increasingly wanting different to the segregated sort of society that we've lived in until now.
I believe so, yes. I feel that is very much, Carrickfergus is very much wanting to move forward and come away from the other social factors it would be more commonly known for when it makes the news, but we want to move forward in a good light, yes.
Okay. And Barry, let me ask you, because if areas like Carrickfergus, and we shouldn't pick on Carrickfergus, other towns and villages on all sides of the community are in the same place. Your area of Glenarm is probably in the same place as well. But we forget sometimes that the teachers and staff in a school are part of the community. So how do you make sure, as you move forward and become integrated, hopefully in the next year or two, that Seaview Primary School and the staff there are comfortable with and contributing to that integrated ethos?
Well, a couple of things. You know, if our development proposal is successful, we'd be the first Catholic school in Northern Ireland ever to transform to integrated status. So there's a lot of eyes on us at the minute, and you know, we are cautiously optimistic. But with regards to staff and the area, Glenarm and the surrounding areas is a very religious, you know, has a real good religious mix, and you have a lot of mixed marriages, you have Catholics and Protestants, and at our staff, I would say our staff is roughly, you know, 50-50, 60-40 Catholic Protestant. So there has been a great mix within the school already. So we have been, I suppose we have been the embodiment of an integrated school without going through the process. And, you know, that made it easier for us. We did have parents who, you know, had a few concerns, but we, as I said, we had open days, pop-in days, and we had parental information evenings, and we were able to dispel all those fears and worries that they might have had.
Shane, far away.
Yeah, I was just going to say something that Barry touched on there, which was the kind of integrated nature of the teaching staff already, because, you know, often when we talk about integrated education, there's quite obviously and necessarily a focus on students, but the teaching side is equally important. I was struck by the report in the British Journal of Education Studies, I think it was last month, which is talking about teaching across the divide and actually how segregated teaching remains as a profession in Northern Ireland. And there's an important role there as well that integrated schools play in bridging that divide and creating that kind of cross-denominational community just as much as they do with the students that populate integrated schools.
So Shane, you're a member of the Integrated Education AlumNI. Can you tell us what that organisation is and what sort of work does it do?
Yeah, so the Integrated AlumNI is a charity in Northern Ireland that was set up a few years ago by folks other than myself, so credit to them for getting that off the ground. And essentially it's a quite traditional alumni association that seeks to connect integrated education alumni with current students and with one another. So just one example of that is the annual Back to School program, or this year it's going to be a virtual Back to School program, what with COVID, which is an opportunity for folks who've been through integrated education and are now established in their careers, reconnecting or connecting with students at schools and mentoring them, helping them navigate career decisions and otherwise. So that's one aspect of it. But more than that, it's just about building a community of alums in the way that is actually quite common elsewhere. I mean, in the United States, schools are very good at managing and maintaining their alumni associations, and that accrues real value to those institutions, because obviously as folks go on in their career, they're able to lend their support to the school. And I think that this is the same kind of approach with the alumni, where you build this very broad spectrum network over many years, and that network is able to, over the long term, really add value back to Northern Ireland and to the integrated movement in Northern Ireland, whether through advocacy, fundraising, or otherwise.
Let me go back to Lucinda. We've heard the story from the teachers' perspective. We've heard the story from the students and the terrific work the alumni are doing in all parts of the world. Would you have a message to give to other parents who are listening to this and thinking, is this the right direction for them and their children? What's your message to those parents?
Well, my message is, a lot of the topic at the minute is our new normal and how, as a society, we're moving forward. As part of that new normal, why shouldn't integrated education be part of that?
Absolutely. And Barry, similar question to you. I suppose, is your school becoming part of the new normal? But I really want to ask you, what message would you have, Barry, as principal of Seaview Primary School? What message would you have to other principals and other schools on all sides of the community in Northern Ireland?
Well, I would say that, integration is certainly something that they should think about, and they would have to ensure that there was a demand for it. In some parts of Northern Ireland, it simply wouldn't work at the minute. So I think it's important to make sure that within the community and area that they teach, there is a demand for integrated education. And I think from my own perspective and the staff and the governors, we found it important to work from an end goal and work backwards. So, for example, the parental vote, we had to count back so many weeks because of the whole process of getting that organised. And I think another bit of advice for principals would be to share the load. I was very fortunate when we were writing our development proposal that I had parents help write parts of it, I had the governors write parts of it, I had teaching staff write parts of it, and I wrote parts of myself. And the chair of governors and myself then edited the final version. So certainly sharing the load is a very important aspect. And I think as well, integrity, honesty to the community. Tell them what you're doing, how you're going about it, and keep your word. That's important.
Having gone through the vote, if you could turn back time, would you do it again?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It just really works for Glenarm. It's what the parents want. They want the children of the village and the surrounding areas to come together and be educated together, to learn about their different cultures and faiths, and to celebrate their childhood together, their schooling and their education together. And it just makes sense. It means that, if a child is talking about First Holy Communion or talking about, World War II or Remembrance Sunday, those are just norms. It's not like a new thing they hear whenever they're 16 or 18 and don't understand it. So it's a way for the whole community to understand, everybody and live together as a proper community, rather than what has been happening was that all the children went to different schools and were just vacating the village every morning and coming back in the afternoons. And it simply doesn't make sense.
Thank you. Shane, I know this broadcast is going to be listened to by teachers and by parents and by other decision makers in Northern Ireland. What would your message to them be?
I think it's long past the time that integrated education was given the broad spectrum political support that it deserves. But I recognize that the nature of politics is such that broad spectrum support is probably not coming in the near future. As a result, this really has to be a parent and school driven movement. I give due credit to Barry and Lucinda on that front, because that's ultimately what drives change here, a desire by communities to see their children educated together, to create a kind of common understanding even where there are differences of perspective or experience. And as a result of that, to build a kind of society that we would all ultimately like to see, which is one of plurality but normalcy, where differences are not flashpoints so much as they are kind of just different bits of the tapestry of Northern Ireland. One other point I would make about integrated education that I think is sometimes lost is that it's not just about the diversity of religious background in the schools that really accrues value to the students. It's also about the fact that you get such a range, or at least in my experience, you get such a range of socioeconomic backgrounds, professional backgrounds for parents and things like that. You know, as someone who comes from a working class background in Northern Ireland, being educated alongside kids whose parents were doctors or lawyers, and others kids whose parents were electricians or joiners or whatever, you were exposed to a much broader range of life experience. And that was critical in enabling you to imagine various different futures for yourself, which would have perhaps been more restricted and more limited in a more singular environment where you're really only around people like you, from an area like you, from a background like you. So there's real value, not just in the diversity of religion and integrated education, but also just the diversity of people and backgrounds.
So Shane, what does integrated education mean to you?
I think integrated education for me was ultimately an opportunity to lead a life and to live a life that otherwise wouldn't have been available to me. And by that I mean, you know, having really close friendships with people who aren't from a unionist, loyalist, or, you know, Protestant kind of background, kind of environment I grew up in. Married a Catholic, you know, that's not something that would have happened, I think, had I not gone to integrated education. So to sum up in one sentence, integrated education was an opportunity to be exposed to a much broader world than I knew about before attending integrated education. And as a result, to build experience and to build a life that otherwise wouldn't have been possible.
What does integrated education mean to you, Barry Corr?
Well, I would say integrated education for myself, for the staff, for the parents, for the pupils of Glenarm and the surrounding areas. It is a chance for the pupils that come from the same area and with, I suppose, different backgrounds to come together and to share and celebrate what makes them similar, what makes them different, and to grow up together and to be educated together and to grow into young adults and celebrate life together.
Lucinda, what does integrated education mean to you?
Integrated education means inclusion, not exclusion. It includes everybody in society, and without it, I don't feel society can move forward.
Well, there we have it. And can I say thank you to our contributors today. Thank you, Lucinda Wilson. Thank you to Barry Corr. And thank you to Shane Greer, giving different perspectives of what integrated education means for a parent, for a principal and teacher, and from somebody who's been through the system and is now making his way in the world in the United States. I think the messages are really clear for parents. The integrated journey is rewarding, more rewarding than you can imagine. For teachers and principals, it is something that is going to benefit your school. And for people who will go to an integrated school in a diverse environment, it creates a normal, the way it should be for young people growing up. And I think for decision makers, the message is, it's part of your job to create a more normal society in Northern Ireland. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear more about how you can contribute to integrated education, keep watching.
Thank you for joining us today, and a special thank you to our panellists for their willingness to engage and to answer the questions so openly. If you want to find out more information, we have a link to a leaflet in our comments section below. And if you'd like to find out how your school could become integrated, visit integratemyschool.com. We're going to leave the final word to an avid campaigner for integrated education, Baroness Mayblood.
It's a new school year and of course one in very difficult circumstances. Looking to the future, it is heartening to see so many parents, schools and communities working together for an integrated future. I would like to congratulate all the 8 schools and their parents who have recently demonstrated overwhelming support for transformation to integrated education. If you're a parent and would like to see your child receive an integrated education, then please visit integratemyschool.com.